We hope to encourage applications to the ITCR Education Resource, RSA, provide background on the ITCR program, and then provide an overview of the ITCR Education Resource. While questions about the scope of the funding opportunity announcement will be addressed during the webinar, questions about your specific study aims will not be addressed. And very quickly, for our agenda, we will start with an overview of the ITCR program, including its history, goals, and activities. This is really important context for the education resource. And then, and this will be done by Julie. And then I will walk through the actual ITCR education resource funding opportunity announcement, and we'll finish with Q&A. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Thanks very much, Betsy. So as Betsy said, I'm going to spend the first few minutes of this webinar giving you some background about the NCI's Informatics Technology for Cancer Research program to give you context for where this education resource fits in and how it supports the goals of ITCR. So the Informatics Technology for Cancer Research program was initiated by the NCI as a trans-NCI program to support investigator-initiated informatics technology development to support critical needs in cancer research. ITCR is a broad-based program and supports informatics technology across all aspects of cancer research, from discovery biology to clinical decision support, epidemiology, risk assessment, and so forth. The program places a particular emphasis on the development of open source interoperable software tools and resources, as well as on the dissemination of these user-friendly resources. And the ITCR website is a good resource to find out information about the program, all of its funding opportunities, the grants funded to date, and the tools and resources that have been supported through the program. The program was initially conceived in 2011, and the first funding opportunities were issued back in 2012. After the first 3 years, the program renewal was approved, and the funding opportunities reissued. Then in 2018, the program underwent a second review. And based on this review, new components are being added to the program that we'll talk about today. And these new funding opportunities have been released in 2019. So what are the funding mechanisms for ITCR? Since its inception, ITCR has been an informatics technology development program that supports development of informatics technologies across the development lifecycle. Since the beginning, we've had funding opportunities that support early stage software development and advanced stage software development. Those are currently represented by the U01 opportunity, RFA CA 19039, and the U24 opportunity, RFA CA 19040. In the first renewal, we added 2 additional components to support a broader life cycle of informatics technology development. That included an R21 component for innovative computational research that's now supported through the RFA CA 19038. We also added a second U24 for the sustainment of highly accessed resources, and this is supported through RFA CA 19041. So these 4 funding mechanisms, again, represent ITCR's opportunities to support technology development. In addition, as I mentioned, we've added new components to the program this year. That includes a set of competing revision mechanisms. They're aimed at supporting the adoption and implementation of ITCR technologies by ongoing NCI-funded research. And we have 3 funding opportunities to support competitive revisions to current U01, R01, and U24 grants. As we'll be talking about today, we're adding another U component, an ITCR education resource, which is a UE5 mechanism to support informatics training and to improve tool usability. And that will be the focus of today's webinar. Um, as I've mentioned, ITCR, let's see, yes. As I've mentioned, ITCR supports a range of informatics technology development. And again, all of the funded grants are available on the ITCR website on the funded projects page. And you're able to see both active grants and completed grants, along with links to their NIH reporter records. The portfolio spans support for many data types. Nearly half of the portfolio supports tools and resources that support the analysis, management, and visualization of various types of omics data. This includes genomics, transcriptomics, epigenomics, proteomics, and genomic visualization. There's also a sizable aspect of the portfolio that supports various aspects of cancer image analysis, both in the medical imaging and the pathology imaging domain. We have several projects supporting analysis of clinical data and the relevant data standards, including projects that support natural language processing and the development of domain-specific ontologies. And finally, several other domains are represented in the areas of biomarkers and network biology, protein structure, high-throughput data transfer, and radiation therapy. In all, 95 grants have been funded through ITCR to date since its inception. The program is not only broad-based from the standpoint of domains of science it supports, it's also broad-based by the range of informatics technologies it supports. And this slide just shows an example of the types of technologies that are supported through ITCR and are represented in the portfolio. That includes data mining, visualization, and analytic tools, data and annotation tools, and that includes common data elements and ontologies. ITCR supports statistical methods, graph and network theory approaches, as well as several grants supporting machine learning methods. As I mentioned previously, we have projects supporting natural language processing and text mining, clinical decision support and treatment planning, behavioral intervention, as well as we're also interested in technology to support next generation clinical trials and clinical trials matching. So again, as you can see, ITCR supports a broad scope of informatics technologies for cancer research. On our website, we maintain a catalog of all of the tools that are available that have been supported through ITCR. And with each record for each tool, we provide available information about the resource. That can include a pointer to the tool website, such as in this example, a pointer to the source code for the tool or resource, a link to the NIH reporter record, and for several of the more mature tools, investigators have created short explainer videos describing the functionality of the tool for potential users. ITCR is not only a set of individual projects supporting cancer research, but we strive to build a community of best practice in cancer informatics and to provide interoperable tools that support integrative cancer research. And in support of that goal, ITCR supports several activities that encourage and enable collaborations among researchers. That includes monthly PI teleconference calls, annual face-to-face meetings. We also have 3 investigator-led working groups. And these are ways that investigators get to know each other and identify opportunities for collaborations. To actually support those collaborations, we have set-asides built into the U01 and U24 grants that are restricted for use for collaborations that are proposed post-award. And so these have encouraged collaborations among ITCR investigators to support tool interoperability, as well as collaborations with informatics tool developers outside of ITCR to connect ITCR tools to other resources as well. We've also had opportunities to award administrative supplements in this regard as well. Finally, there are informatics technology grants that have been funded by the NCI outside of the ITCR program. And as appropriate, we invite these investigators to participate in ITCR program activities in order to become part of this community of practice. The left of this slide is a graphic that was developed at our ITCR investigators meeting 2 years ago. That's a graphical depiction of some of the connections between the tools supported through the program. In the graphic, the gray circles represent a tool or resource. The orange lines, the blue lines represent connections between these tools. The orange lines represent connections that are in progress, and the gray dotted lines represent opportunities for collaboration that were identified by the investigators. And this what we call ITCR connectivity map is available through the ITCR website hosted at the index.org site. As I mentioned, the ITCR program underwent a third-party program review beginning in 2018 in preparation for the second renewal of the program. This review was carried out by the IDA Science and Technology Policy Institute last year, and part of the review involved convening an expert panel of informatics experts outside of ITCR to review the program activities, the impact to date, and to provide recommendations for the future. The expert panel recommendations are summarized on this slide. First of all, the expert panel agreed that the ITCR program was having an important impact on supporting informatics tools for cancer research, and that this is a continuing and, in fact, growing need that the NCI should continue to support. In that context, they recommended additional considerations for further improving the impact of the program. That included diversifying the funding areas within specific high priority areas, considering a dedicated review panel to promote continuity of reviews, improving the outreach to the broader cancer community and provide opportunities for better integration with users, to increase our consideration for resource sustainability, to seek connectivity with other NCI programs to guide further development of the tools, and finally, and of most relevance to this funding opportunity, to consider the development of formal education and outreach functions to introduce the ITCR tools to the larger biological user community. And so with those recommendations, with our last renewal, the ITCR program, as I mentioned previously, continued the support for the 4 technology development FOAs that I described previously. To support the better connectivity with end users of the tools, we added the competitive revisions components, starting with supporting revisions to NCI R01, U01, and U24 grants. And finally, again, to support the recommendation of providing an educational component, we have released this UE5 ITCR education resource funding opportunity. And with that, I'm now going to turn the webinar over to my colleague Betsy, who will now talk in more depth about this funding opportunity.
Thanks. So I think Julie's going to make me a presenter. I will share. Let me follow this. So now you should be in presenter mode. Do you see the slides?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. So just to reiterate, the mission of the ITCR education resource is to conduct activities that engage the research and informatics community to use and extend the ITCR technologies. And we're proposing to do this through a two-pronged approach. The first is to provide in-depth courses and workshops on topics in cancer informatics using the ITCR tools as exemplars. And the second is to provide guidance and support for the informatics tool developers to optimize informatics tool usability and user support. And I'll cover these two areas in greater depth throughout the rest of this webinar. So as a reminder, the receipt dates for this funding opportunity announcement are December 19th of 2019 and then July 31st of next year. While we do have two receipt dates, it's important to note that if an awardee is selected from the applicants submitted in the first round, this FOA will be terminated before the second receipt date. So again, the motivation behind this funding opportunity announcement is to ensure that ITCR tools are adapted and used by the cancer research community. The ITCR program realized that just putting out informatics tools and resources wasn't sufficient to ensure that they were being used by the cancer researchers. And while the ITCR development teams do a lot of outreach and education on their own, this education resource is designed to complement and amplify those efforts through two main approaches. The first is in providing education in cancer informatics for cancer researchers, so providing the baseline knowledge that cancer researchers will need in informatics to enable them to incorporate informatics analyses into their research. And the second is really around tool usability, understanding that people are more likely to use informatics tools that are really user-friendly. And so the second education component is really focused on increasing the usability and user support of the ITCR tools themselves by targeting the ITCR development teams. So to provide an overview of the cancer informatics courses that we expect the education resources to provide. Again, the goal of these courses is to provide in-depth training in cancer informatics utilizing ITCR tools as exemplars. So we expect that the courses should be varied in complexity and format. And while a single course could cover in-depth a single informatics topic, the full offering of courses should cover the breadth of the domains represented by ITCR. The courses may include hands-on training as appropriate. And again, these courses should be using ITCR tools as exemplars, but they may include both currently supported ITCR tools as well as those that were previously supported by ITCR but are no longer receiving funding. Again, the target audience here is cancer researchers across all career stages. The individual courses may target different scientific backgrounds or informatics experience depending on their topic, and this should just be explained in the application, the target audience. The anticipated outcomes of these courses are that researchers will be better able to incorporate informatics analyses in their research, and that by using ITCR tools as exemplars in these courses, it will also increase awareness and dissemination of the ITCR tools. So to go into a little more depth around the requirements for the cancer informatics courses, we expect applications to propose a minimum of 6 courses. And again, we would like to see these varied in both complexity and format. And by that we mean you could range from anything to having shorter online workshops to longer multi-day in-person workshops. And again, all these courses must utilize ITCR tools as exemplars. Again, with the course topics, single courses may focus on specific informatics domains and demonstrate depth in that area, but the full offering of courses should cover the variety of ITCR research domains. We expect that these proposed courses should enhance the participants' ability to incorporate specific informatics analyses into their research program. And again, for the course format, you should explore a variety of approaches, and if you are using any innovative approaches, highlight those as appropriate. And again, as appropriate, these courses should include hands-on training with selected tools. Continuing on the requirements, the course development may occur after award, but you should, in your application, describe the courses that you anticipate developing as part of the award. We also encourage collaboration with ITCR development teams for input on the course content or other participation as appropriate. And you are also responsible for ensuring that the appropriate data needed to courses are available. We expect that the first course should be offered within the first year of award, and that each course proposed should be offered at least 3 times over the entire award period, with each of the subsequent offerings being revised and updated as appropriate based on evaluation and feedback of the previous offering. Post-course completion, we do expect that course-related resources should be shared, the materials such as syllabi and archive video recording should be provided openly and without restriction for use. So some examples of cancer informatics topics that might be appropriate for such courses include multi-omics analysis for cancer driver gene discovery, lineage analysis of cancer cell populations to understand tumor evolution and the development of drug resistance, integrated genomic analysis of racial disparities in cancer development and response to therapy, facilitating analysis and interpretation of impact of genetic variations or mutations on disease risk or outcomes, or accessing and utilizing EHR data for epidemiology studies. To provide an overview of the courses in optimizing tool usability and user support, the goal of these courses is to provide guidance to ITCR development teams for improving informatics tool usability and user support. And we expect that these courses would include topics that support improving usability, robustness, maintainability, and utilization of tools and resources. These courses should target the needs of ITCR development teams, and we encourage a variety of approaches here. I would interpret course rather broadly here, especially for this particular activity, where you might imagine things ranging from bringing in a subject matter expert around user support all the way to hackathons that might encourage more collaboration among ITCR development teams. Again, here, the target audience is currently funded ITCR development teams. And the anticipated outcomes of these courses are improved usability and user support of ITCR tools, and through that, increased usage of ITCR tools. So to go into the requirements for the courses in optimizing tool usability and user support, we would like you to describe the approaches to working with ITCR development teams to identify priority topics. While you should provide examples of possible topics that you would propose for these courses, these topics should be selected post-award because it will be based on the needs of the currently funded ITCR development team. And you'll note here that we are not specifying a minimum number of courses to be offered because we expect that these courses will be tailored to the needs of the currently funded teams, and you cannot have those, and you won't be able to have those conversations in depth until after award. Again, we'd like to see a variety of approaches and formats explored for these courses, and the first course should be offered within 18 months of award, with topics repeated based on the interest and demand of ITCR development teams. Again, we expect that resources developed as part of these educational activities should be provided openly and without restriction for use. So some examples of topics in optimizing tool usability and user support that might be appropriate for courses include increasing and improving user engagement in support of user-driven design, increasing tool adoption and dissemination, improving user support through tool documentation, tutorials, and example analyses, approaches to enable researchers to use multiple informatics tools to perform integrative analyses. So I'd like to emphasize the ITCR network activities that Julie had mentioned earlier. So it is important that the awardee is expected to participate in these ITCR network activities, including the monthly PI teleconferences, any working group meetings in areas of interest across ITCR, and the annual PI meeting. Engagement in these ITCR network activities is critical because it will provide better understanding of the scope of the informatics topics that are supported by ITCR, as well as better understanding of the areas of need to further support and amplify efforts of the ITCR development team in tool usability and user support. I just want to touch on non-responsive applications. So applications which do not include both focus areas, both the cancer informatics courses, as well as optimizing tool usability and user support will be considered non-responsive. In addition, applications will be considered non-responsive if the proposed cancer informatics courses do not include ITCR tools as exemplars, or if the courses in optimizing tool usability and user support are not targeted at currently funded ITCR development teams. And finally, applications that do not demonstrate collaboration and partnership with the ITCR development teams will be non-responsive. So now I'm going to go into a little more depth on the research education program plan, which should be uploaded into the research strategy section. So for folks who are not familiar with education funding opportunity announcements, all of these elements presented here must be submitted as part of the application, or your application will not be reviewed. So you need to include a proposed research education program, program director, principal investigator information, program faculty, program participants, institutional environment and commitment, a diversity recruitment plan, a plan for instruction and the responsible conduct of research, and an evaluation plan. So the proposed research education plan should describe your overall vision for the ITCR education resource, including the organizational structure and components, as well as collaboration with the ITCR development team. So elements of this program, of this plan that touch on both the cancer informatics courses as well as the courses in optimizing tool usability include describing the proposed multifaceted program, including describing the goals and objectives of the courses, the underlying rationale for the proposed courses, describing the innovative approaches, formats, and variations in course complexity, describing your timeline for course development, and finally, providing the revision plan based on evaluation and feedback of prior courses. Components of the proposed research education program that are specific to the cancer informatics courses include describing how the courses will enable researchers to incorporate informatics analyses into their research program, describing both the breadth of the course offerings as a whole as well as depth in the individual courses, describing how ITCR tools will be incorporated, describing your strategy for partnering with ITCR development teams, and demonstrating the ability to supply data to conduct the courses. Components of the proposed research education program that are specific to the courses in optimizing informatics tool usability and user support include describing how the proposed topics will aid ITCR development teams and describing how the priority topics will be selected. In the program director, principal investigator section, you should describe the administration of the program, how the PD or PI is actively engaged in research or teaching in the area of cancer informatics, demonstrate the ability to organize, administer, monitor, and evaluate the research education program. Specifically for multi-PI applications, you should describe the complementary skills, integrated approach, leadership approach, and governance approach, and clearly define and justify the role of each PD or PI and how they fit into the proposed leadership structure. In the program faculty section, you should demonstrate how faculty have research experience in cancer informatics or informatics tool usability, and summarize the characteristics of the participating faculty, including their expertise in informatics education, informatics analyses, informatics tool development, deployment, dissemination, and user support. And what I'll note here is that while we would encourage that program faculty should be named as key personnel on the applications, even if they don't have significant contribution, because that will allow you to include their bio sketches in your application. In the program participant section, you should describe the eligibility criteria of the participants in your courses and whether or not there are any specific educational background characteristics or career levels that are targeted for the informatics courses. You should describe the specific scientific background, research interest, or informatics background needed to participate in the cancer informatics courses if applicable, and describe how participants will be selected for the courses. In the institutional environment and commitment section, you should describe your institutional environment and the availability of facilities and educational resources that may contribute to your application. You should demonstrate evidence of institutional commitment and any unique features of the scientific environment or collaborative arrangements that may be leveraged as appropriate. If you are proposing multiple, you should describe how this will enhance the quality of the proposed program and how activities will be coordinated across the sites, as well as your approach to effective communication among the sites. And again, a letter of institutional commitment must be attached as part of your letters of support. In your, for the recruitment plan to enhance diversity, you should describe your plan to enhance recruitment, including the strategies that will be used to enhance the recruitment of trainees from underrepresented backgrounds, which may include individual racial and ethnic backgrounds and underrepresented in health-related sciences or individuals with disabilities. And then finally, for the plan for instruction and responsible conduct of research, just as a reminder, this is defined as the practice of scientific investigation with integrity. And the components that you need to include in this plan include the format of the instruction, the subject matter that you plan to cover, how faculty will participate, the duration of instruction, as well as the frequency of instruction. And one thing to note for short-term training programs of 6 months or less, which we anticipate most of these courses will be, the duration of instruction and the responsible conduct of research can be made appropriate to the total duration of the research education program. And you just need to justify this duration of the application. So this may be a case where online instruction is appropriate, or you may use innovative strategies to be able to incorporate the instruction of responsible conduct or research and to relate it to the scientific focus of your education program. Finally, you must include an evaluation plan, which describes your plan for evaluating the activities that are being supported by the award, including specifying any baseline metrics and describing the measures that will be used to gauge the short or long-term success of the program. So, for example, the measures that you may use to gauge the proficiency of participants to incorporate cancer informatics methods into their research, or gauge how well informatics tool developers are better able to support their user communities and improve tool usability. You should describe your timeline for obtaining feedback from participants on the impact and value of the courses, and describe how areas of improvement will be identified and incorporated for future offerings. In your letters of support, again, you should include a letter of support of institutional commitment, and this is a required component of the application. Proposed program faculty should also submit letters of support, and while not required, letters of support from ITCR development teams are highly encouraged. And then finally, to touch on research sharing plans, as mentioned previously, education materials and resources developed in support of the courses should be openly provided without restriction for use by the broader community. This may include, but is not limited to, things like the course syllabi, any archived video recordings with closed captioning, informatics tool usability best practice documents, or any software that might be developed in offering of the courses. And if appropriate, a software dissemination plan should be included. So with that, we will now take questions, and you can also feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is here, and I'll leave this up for the duration of the webinar. So I need to pull up the chat to see if you've got any questions.
Mel, have any questions come in on the chat or QA? I haven't seen any, but I'm wondering.
Yes, I haven't seen any either. I guess there should be a raise hand function as well, and I think if you use that, Mel can also unmute you.
Yes, the only question I saw in the chat that came through was actually whether the slides will be made available at the end of the webinar.
So yeah, we will definitely make the recording available, and I think the only issue with the slides is we would need to make them FIVO compliant before we could post them online, but we can certainly email the slides out.
I see a question from Natalie Pochet saying, I believe it's preferable for MPI proposals as opposed to single PIs. Betsy, do you want to take that, or should I? Go ahead.
Either way, I think we're going to have the same answer. But I'll say, because of the scope and nature of this education resource, you can see how broad it is. We do expect that many of the applications coming in will be multi-PI applications. I don't know if you want to add to that, Julie.
That's exactly what I was going to say, that the breadth it suggests that collaboration is going to likely be required to meet the requirements of this FOA.
Okay. So I see one question coming in over the chat, whether the question is, should the courses cover all ITCR tools or a few tools that might fit a workflow or pipeline? So I don't think it's reasonable to anticipate that every single ITCR tool that has ever been developed would be covered by these courses, but we would like to see some that fit a workflow or pipeline. Of course, in the courses, it doesn't have to be only ITCR tools that are also used as exemplars, but should include at least one ITCR tool.
Dave Stewart has asked, is there any data available on the current usage of ITCR tools? David, we don't provide a central resource that catalogs the usage of the tools. I think what I would recommend is getting in touch with the teams whose tools might align with your interests and talk to them about usage. Of course, the sites themselves that are linked from the tool catalog can have information about publications and usage there, but we don't have a single portal describing the usage.
All right, so there's also a question online. Is the idea to focus on currently funded ITCR tools? What about if a tool is no longer funded since funding periods are 2+ years? So the Cancer Informatics courses may include ITCR tools that are no longer funded, so anything that was ever funded by ITCR. The tool usability courses, however, should be focused on currently funded ITCR teams. So there's a question about knowing how many applications were received last round would be useful. So we can answer that is that this is the first receipt date. This is the first time this UB5 has been offered. So we haven't received any applications ever.
There's a question, could MPIs be not an ITCR investigator? And the answer is yes. There is no requirement for the PIs or MPIs to be ITCR investigators. Another question, do you provide training resources such as distance learning for, I think, hosting computer hands-on? So I'm going to interpret that question to ask, are training courses that are offered remotely in scope for the informatics training courses? And the answer is yes. Remotely offered courses are in scope, and we're looking for a variety of mechanisms in the courses that are offered.
Okay, so one question online that I see is some ITCR tools are intended for developers, for example, myvariant.info. Are the tools required to train participants on programming and API usage? Are the courses required to train participants on programming and API usage? So I would say no. You should just, again, this is where sort of the background of the participants in the course may vary. You just need to describe what the minimum background coming in for the participant is for that particular course. So if you're going to offer a course that requires the participants to have some minimum programming experience, you would need to just specify that in your application.
There's a question, do you imagine this could be structured as not only MPI, but also multi-institute, possibly with some subawards to current ITCR tool developers who would lead portions of the education activities related to those tools? So the answer to that is yes. Multi-institute applications are certainly envisioned, and subawards to current ITCR tool developers are also in scope, as long as those subawards don't overlap with their current ITCR funding. But that is absolutely a structure that we would envision and support. Take another one. I would love to collaborate on this with other PIs. Is there any mechanism for me to identify other PIs who might be interested in collaborating on this? I'm not aware of any in my current who are interested. That's a great question. We don't have existing formal mechanisms for doing matchmaking, if you will. I will say that I'm sure, and this is Steve Piccolo, Betsy and myself would be happy to talk to you about the types of collaborators you're looking for and help make connections there. So we as program staff are happy to facilitate connections as much as possible.
I don't know, we're seeing different questions. I'm not sure how that's happening, but I don't see any more on the chat that I'm monitoring.
I see. I'm looking at the Q&A.
Oh, I have the chat up, so that's the difference. I don't know. I have to find the.
Yeah, there's a couple of channels to get input. But I have another one here. It sounds like our proposal will propose specific courses, but the funded site will work with you to choose the actual topics and tools. Trying to understand that question.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it.
Bill, this is from Bill Hirsch. Bill, if you raise your hand, we might be able to unmute you. Or Mel, if you could unmute Bill Hirsch, maybe you could elaborate on your question, Bill.
So he may not be online anymore because I just got an email from him. So we can maybe follow up by email with him, unless other people have a. Oh, there we go.
Is that Bill?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to understand. So it sounds like in the proposal, we choose topics and tools, but if we or whoever is funded will work with you to select the actual topics and tools that get developed. Is that the case?
So I will say for the tools and optimizing tool usability, that would definitely be the case because we don't imagine that those should be chosen based on the needs of the currently funded ITCR development team. So we would imagine that choosing those topics happens after award. If you're asking whether or not development of the cancer informatics courses will be decided in collaboration with NCI staff, is that what you're asking?
Yes. I guess a reason for asking it is that, you know, if one brings in certain experts in certain areas and then those areas are not chosen for the actual topics and tools to be developed, will the budget be changeable, or at least the people on the budget and so forth?
So the application. Go ahead, Julie.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think one thing you're asking is whether there's refinement of the topics and courses post-award for the cancer informatics courses, and that's not really envisioned. We envision that what you propose for the cancer informatics courses in your application is what you will, if selected for award, are the courses that you will develop and then offer. It was the courses for cancer informatics developers to support usability. Those are the ones that are more developed post-award based on the needs expressed by the developer community. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't pick and choose among the courses that you propose. The application would be proposed as a whole, would be accepted as a whole, or be awarded as a whole. So then I see the next question is whether specific courses for cancer researchers combine the best of ITCR tools and tools developed elsewhere. So yes, as long as ITCR tools are also used as exemplars, they can also use other informatics tools as well. And then Julie, you can probably answer the next one faster than I can. Are the currently funded ITCR tools indicated on the tool list with the dollar symbol?
No, so the dollar symbol is simply the link to the NIH reporter record. The way to see which ones are currently funded is there's a funded projects page on the website, and on that page there's an indication of active or completed, and so active are the ones that are currently funded. Completed are those whose funding is completed.
So then the question is there a balance between the two trainings for end users and for tool developers? So we did not specifically indicate a balance between the two because we didn't want to be overly prescriptive. Well, we do imagine there will be a high focus on the cancer informatics courses, but this is going to be up to your application. I think the next one is just someone who's interested in joining multi-institute collaboration discussions. So we'll have your contact info if anyone reaches out to us. So Bill, I think we answered your follow-up question. The next question is, do you allow or encourage partnerships between academic and non-academic organizations? And that is allowable. Okay, and then there's one over in the chat section. Let's see. Do we envision 3 for cancer informatics and 3 for usability, or can a different mix, 3 courses for cancer informatics or 3 courses for usability, or can a different mix be proposed? So the requirement is for a minimum of 6 courses for cancer informatics, and then the number of usability courses may vary depending on what the needs of the ITCR development team. So the only requirement is for a minimum of 6 cancer informatics courses.
And just to reiterate what you said earlier, Betsy, we kept the courses for usability more flexible, and we're open to your innovative suggestions in that regard. And I'll also just take the opportunity, since we're talking about that, to reiterate something Betsy said in her presentation is, we encourage you to think broadly about what is meant by courses when thinking about the courses focused on the ITCR tool developers to support usability. And Betsy used examples such as bringing a subject matter expert in to give a webinar, hackathons, and so forth. So we do encourage creative thought about what's most useful to that community.
Okay, so there's one more question about the tools. When choosing ITCR tools and others to focus on in educational activities, should the emphasis be on open source, open access tools only? Would inclusion of some commercial products be encouraged, discouraged, or neutral? So the ITCR tools themselves are open source, so we encourage those to be open source. In terms of other commercial products to be included in any educational activities, I think we're probably neutral on that. Julie, do you have?
Yeah, I would agree that we're neutral on that. I think if there's a compelling, for any of these courses, as long as the justification is compelling and clearly of value to the community, with regard to other tools, I think we would be neutral on that point.
So any other questions? I'll give folks a minute to type madly. I think we covered all the questions. If anyone else has a question that hasn't been answered, please type it in again or raise your hand so Mel can unmute you.
It looks like we've probably exhausted the questions for today.
Yep. So again, my contact information is here. Please feel free to email me if you've got any other, or call me if you've got any more other questions. And we will be making the webinar. We'll be posting that online. Oh wait. Oh, never mind. That's not a. Okay. That's another person who's willing to collaborate. But yes, feel free to email me if you have any further questions.
Thank you very much, Betsy, and I want to thank everyone for joining today, and Mel for supporting this webinar. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, National Institutes of Health, National Cancer Institute, ITCR.cancer.gov, 1-800-4-CANCER, produced October 2019.